Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to the January 23rd, 2020 meeting of the Burlington Conservation Commission. I'll note for just a moment on the agenda, we have item 6. That is the continued public hearing for 108 Muller Road. That's been continued until March 12th. And item number 7 is the continued public hearing at 127 Bedford Street for some grading and landscaping and some driveway extension. That's continued until February 27th. Okay, so with that, is there anyone in the audience for citizens' time? Something they would like to say something about? Take a few minutes to discuss things that might be important to them? No. All right. After that, we have approval of minutes of January 9th, 2020. Any discussion of them?
I had one item that I didn't get a chance to submit yet, but on 127 Bedford Street, we had mentioned during the discussion the possibility of a fine. And we haven't decided, but I think it should be in the minutes that we will be addressing that when that's continued.
Okay. All right. If there's anything else, no. Could I have a motion to approve the minutes as discussed?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor of approving the minutes for January 9th?
Abstain.
You two are abstaining?
Abstain.
So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 402. Okay. We're on item 4 already. We have notices given. The commission will hold a public meeting during which time we have a request for determination of applicability filed by the trustees.
Do we have to wait to 7:10?
Not for this.
No,
Not
no,
a public, it's not only for a public hearing. The commission will take all information related to proposed soil borings and trail improvements within bordering vegetative wetlands at Mary Cummings Park, 35 Blanchard Road, and will thereafter issue a determination of applicability. The application is being heard under Mass General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, which is known as the Wetlands Protection Act, and Burlington Bylaw, Article 14. The application materials available in the Conservation Office for public review. Okay, so, good evening.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm Josh. I'm the project manager for the trustees. And we're getting started with some work at Mary Cummings Park off of Blanchard Road. So we're deep into the design phase of some landscape improvements. And we're at the point now where we would like to do some soil borings for a boardwalk to be constructed in that large wetland system.
Okay, hold on for a second. Should we turn the light down at all near the screen, or do we have the ability to?
I had turned some off. I can see if there's something else.
And anybody who wants to see could switch seats if they want. Might be a little better.
That's good. We didn't give his full name either, so we need his full
Yeah,
name.
we need your last name too.
Hassenfuss. Josh Hassenfuss.
Okay, thanks. Appreciate it.
So this is the general plan of action that we're like some input on. So the yellow line is the general construction access.
All right. Would you like to put it in? Can we put it in presentation mode at all?
This is actually just the application.
It's just a document, it's not a slide.
It wasn't,
it's not
it's
a
not his
slide.
slideshow. We just thought it would be useful to have their actual application documents here on
Yeah.
the screen.
That's
Oh,
great.
yeah.
That's fine. Okay. That explains
Which
that.
means you have to listen then.
You mean we have to listen too? Okay.
So our proposal is to, just to orientate you, so kind of on the upper right hand, like center, that's roughly where the water tank is on Blanchard Road.
Right.
And then that field area you can see is labeled as Flyers Field. So we're going to use the access. There's a gate there now to come into that gate, into the edge of Flyers Field. Bring equipment through Flyers Field. And then you can see where it's labeled installation of straw wattles at edge of field. Pretty much there it goes into more of a wooded, brushy type, landscape. On a pretty wide trail, you know, it's more like a cart path. And then there's some existing, where it says construct timber bridging in place of existing bog bridge. So there's some narrow bog bridging there that I think is fairly recent that, you know, won't allow for the boring equipment. You know, it's just too narrow, it's too pedestrian. So the idea is to temporarily remove that, do some timber, you know, bridge crossing. You know, bridge is kind of a strong word, but, you know, just to get the equipment in. And then this route takes us onto the gas line easement that we've looked at with John, and that's flagged as a wetland area that we intend to map. And as an aside, I'm working with the gas company engineer on those specifics of crossing. And then we make our way close to the large wetland where we intend to mat and timber as needed to get the boring equipment in.
Down near the bottom of the drawing.
Yes, correct.
Right. Yeah, if you want, you can go over there too, if you.
Well, Eileen can also use the cursor to point to the places on it, you know, while he's
Oh,
talking.
that would have been a good idea. Sorry, didn't think of that.
But that's the
there's the
general,
boardwalk area.
that's the general sense. We're planning for 3 borings. A lot will depend on the conditions, but at least 2. And these are to size the helical piers that are going to be for the boardwalk, which you'll hear more about during the NOI presentation.
And this is all temporary, the construction to allow access?
Yeah. Where it says clear vegetation on new pathway, that, you know, isn't temporary. That's the proposed, well, it's construction access, but also it's the proposed new pathway to the boardwalk. So it kind of
Okay.
serves double duty. But everything else is temporary, yeah.
Okay.
Some of the mats will be rented. Those will be very temporary. I think what we're hoping for with the timber bridging is that some of that will stay in place for the spring. We're anticipating an early April start on the construction. So, but temporary, you know, in the pretty short time span.
Right.
And then everything will be restored, you know, to existing conditions. You know, we don't intend to widen that path or anything long term.
Okay. That's it?
That's it.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
So we'll see if there's any comments or questions. John or Eileen, any concerns or issues we should be aware of from your perspective?
Okay, so as you can see on the plans, there's a row of wattles. So if you're familiar with a flyer's field, it does slope down towards the bottom there of the field. So that we're requiring, and they've shown on the plans, some erosion controls at the bottom because the equipment will probably dig up the field a bit as they traverse it in the spring, where it'll be pretty soggy in that field. That's really the only thing. I just have one question that I forgot to ask before. So you're saying 2 or 3 borings. Obviously the little vehicle won't be able to go very far out into the marsh. Will it have an arm or?
It's track mounted, and
Right.
we're planning to, I mean, it depends on the conditions, you know. We're gonna try to get a boring as far out as we can.
Yeah,
It'll depend. I mean, we got a map for sure,
yeah.
you know. And it's not very wide. I think the machine width we're looking at is about 6 feet wide, so
Yeah.
a single row of mats will do it, you know.
So this is all precursor work to the following hearing for the notice of intent for the actual boardwalk. So the disturbance, where it's shown is the clear vegetation for the new pathway. That's in the buffer zone, but it's part of the permanent trail that'll be on the NOI. So there'll be no restoration there. Other than that, no concerns.
Okay. We'll just see if there's any questions about what you're doing here. And then, Indra, anything else on this?
How long will it take? A day or 2? Or?
If all goes well, the actual borings will take 2 days. We'll need probably 2 or 3 days to kind of, get the site ready to bring the equipment in.
And so this is not the handheld equipment, is that the boring equipment?
No, it's a tracked machine.
The track, oh.
Yeah. The boring depth is like 15 feet to 20 feet.
15 to 20 feet, okay.
So is the trailer or truck that this is going to be carried on going to be parked at the gate or along the side of the road, or?
The only equipment we anticipate getting into that area, in the wetland area, would be the actual boring machine.
Yep.
And then they need like a support truck, like a 1-ton truck, within 200 feet, so that will probably stay on the upper bank. But, there won't be a lot of vehicles into that area. And then to set the timbers and stuff, we'll probably need a tractor or something with some forks.
So the only thing that I can see is if you were loading it from the street, and if the machine came out into the street, like, because it would be quite wet, I assume, that tracking mud and stuff out into the road, that might be an issue.
Well, I think we're trying to, we're trying to get out there maybe as soon as the first week of February, so hopefully.
Before thaw, well,
Yeah.
it's funny though, with this weather, it's like freeze and thaw,
Could be 70 degrees.
Yeah.
But yeah, I anticipate most of the staging will take place inside, especially Blanchard Road being pretty narrow, but we can certainly clean up anything that's on the street.
All right, Bill.
What is the purpose of the borings?
So the borings is, to look at the soil conditions for sizing of the helical piers. This is a public bid, that this larger construction is, so it's also to serve as some pre-construction for the contractors as far as conditions. So it's kind of twofold.
So when you say helical piers, you mean these are actually going to screw into the ground and not involve a lot of excavation?
Yeah, they'll be screwed, yeah.
Thank you.
All right, John? I have nothing. Jen?
Nope.
Two questions. One is there any, if you're going to do it in February, I guess, excessive rain is not going to be an issue.
Hopefully not.
Okay. All right, so that's not a question. Well, I thought I was going to, I realized you answered it by saying February. And the other thing is, how much overburden will be generated from the boring?
That's a good question. Not a lot, it's not like a well drilling operation. But we do anticipate backfilling the boring hole with the, they call them the cuttings, but the.
Right, the cuttings,
material is-
right,
Yeah,
right. So there won't be a big mess
it won't
afterwards.
be a big mess, no.
Okay, so that was my question.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, I anticipate the only noticeable thing that we'll have is obviously matted vegetation where the mats went in.
Yeah, but that comes back anyway.
That comes back, yeah.
Right, right.
And this is the same footprint as the boardwalk that we're planning for permit.
Right. Okay, I didn't hear anything else. Anyone in the audience have a comment on this? Yes,
John Sachs.
into the microphone, John, so everyone can hear you.
John Sachs from Friends of Mary Cummings Park. Nobody here from the Flyers. I just wanted to double check. How are you guys going to get across their precious landing field without tearing it up?
Oh, there's gonna be some impacts, and that's just the nature of construction. But, we're anticipating restoration on the way out of the
Okay.
larger project.
Because it occurs to me, you could probably just go around it.
We could, I think that's a lot more, I mean, we're not gonna be able to go around in the sense that we're gonna be able to avoid any turf. So it's kind of like, that's a lot more area to restore. And there is kind of distinctive, like, cart path that I hope is a little bit firmer than the rest of the field. I mean, you know the site a lot better, but I think when you do these types of things, there's always impacts. But I anticipate we'll be able to limit it to, pretty narrow.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, John. All right, so anyone else in the audience want to make a comment on this one? Okay, we have a negative conditional determination. We'll review it, and I think they'll give you a copy, I hope.
Thank you.
And you can,
Yeah, that'd be great.
yeah. And you're welcome to sit down if you'd like, right, the chair right there.
Okay.
Yeah. And then we'll review it, see if there's any comments from anyone, and then we'll vote.
Okay, so the The proposed determination of applicability starts with the findings. The project description is soil borings in a marsh for a boardwalk project, upgrade an existing boardwalk, and perform other trail improvements, including vegetation pruning within bordering vegetated wetlands and buffer zones at Mary Cummings Park. The application also included installing a new footbridge over a small intermittent stream within the park, which I don't think Josh mentioned, but the commissioners who went on the site walk did see it. There's a small intermittent stream which emanates from an outfall of stormwater outfall from Northeastern University, and the bridge crossing is probably 3 feet maximum, I think, something like that. Yeah. So it's just a small bridge over a very small stream. Jurisdictional areas, the proposed work is within bordering vegetated wetlands and the 100-foot buffer zone of bordering vegetated wetlands and over an intermittent stream. We didn't check, it may also be in riverfront. Certainly part of the boardwalk would be within riverfront. Other findings, foot traffic on the existing makeshift boardwalks has led to their deterioration and threatens to cause a negative effect on the soils and vegetation. The Commission finds that constructing the boardwalk through the wetland areas would reduce compaction in the wetlands as well as discourage creation of new trails by people attempting to avoid the wetter areas. The work associated with the soil borings would result in temporary wetland impacts. However, this RDA is filed in conjunction with the notice of intent to construct the boardwalk. The order of conditions for that project will include mitigation/restoration conditions. The decision is a proposed negative determination of applicability with condition 1 that no other work beyond what's described in the application is allowed. Number 2, the requirement for the installation of the erosion controls as we discussed. Number 3, the requirement for timber mats or equivalent to be used for all wetland crossings unless the ground is completely frozen, which doesn't seem likely this winter. There'll be no cutting of pressure-treated lumber within the bordering vegetated wetlands, and all wood scraps shall be removed and disposed of properly. Any excess soils excavated for the granite sills for the trail bridging shall be not placed within bordering vegetated wetlands. Once the boardwalk is complete, the existing boardwalk shall be removed and disposed. So these are the small boardwalks we're talking about under the determination. The Commission reserves the right to require additional erosion controls in the event that they're needed, and then standard conditions about the Commission's right to enter the site and do inspections, and a standard condition about noncompliance. I will add an additional condition to address Bill's concerns about keeping Blanchard Road swept, clean and swept.
Okay, anything else from the commission? Anything left out? Very good. Any questions? All right, then we can have a motion to issue a negative conditional determination for the boring project as described on Mary Cummings Park under Burlington Bylaw Article 14 of the State Wetlands Protection Act.
So moved.
Second?
Second?
All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4. It's 6-0-0. All right.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Josh. Okay, so item 5 is a public hearing. Okay. And I'll read the announcement. Notice is hereby given that the Conservation Commission will have a public hearing, during which time we have take information related to a notice of intent filed by the trustees for construction of a new boardwalk and trail relocation and improvements at Mary Cummings Park. It's located at 35 Blanchard Road in Burlington. The proposed work would be within the riverfront area bordering vegetative wetlands and the 100-foot buffer zone to vegetative wetlands. And it would be within the riverfront area, 100-foot buffer zone, pursuant to Burlington Bylaw Article 14. The Commission will be reviewing information relative to this application and may issue an order of conditions, wetlands permit. The application materials available in the Conservation Office for public review. Hello there.
Good evening. I'm Rich Kirby from LEC Environmental Consultants. We filed the notice of intent application on behalf of the trustees. Karen Digg is here with the trustees, and Margaret Tyson's here with the City of Boston. And you met Josh, also from the trustees. The notice of intent application is for those parts of the Mary Cummings Park improvement project that are within the commission's jurisdiction, namely replacement of an existing boardwalk and construction of a new boardwalk with an associated landing. We had a site visit, was that yesterday? It was yesterday.
Yes.
With John Keeley and some of the commission members, and had an opportunity to walk the site. We started at the existing parking lot along Blanchard Road and walked along an existing footpath that extends to the first boardwalk, which if you're looking at the screen here, to the right of on the right-hand side of the rendering, you can see the wetland with the red outline. That's the buffer zone to the wetland. And you can see where we parked in the upper right-hand corner, and then we walked down, and then took the trail across the wetland there. And if you noticed when we sort of veered off to the right there, the footpath was quite steep, and part of the effort here is to make as much of the trails as possible ADA compliant. So we're going to sort of angle in the walking path through an upland area that's currently vegetated to intercept the existing path as it crosses the wetland. The existing path that's there now, the section that's very steep, will be allowed to go fallow, it'll be marked off in some fashion and be restored. As we walked across the wetland, we walked across an 18.5-inch wide informal boardwalk. That's going to be replaced with a 4-foot wide ADA compliant boardwalk with timber curbing. And it will be supported by 2x8 boards that sort of go across the perpendicular to the boardwalk, similar to the support measures that are in place currently that we saw. From there, the footpath continues to the west, and there we go. Continues to the west across, or rather, I guess it would be south of Flyers Field, and continues westerly toward the gas easement. And at the gas easement, we noticed a couple of intermittent streams that are taking surface water from the groundwater seep and directing it toward the wetland within what was the footprint of the proposed pathway and then eventually to the boardwalk. So what we did was we identified the approximate location of the streams, added it to the plan, and rerouted the walking path to the boardwalk, rerouted them to minimize alteration within the streams. To the extent the walking path extends through the streams, it will be comprised of stepping stones to allow the water to flow, the stream water to flow, as it currently does without significant interruption. The oval shape in the parking area you see within the left-hand side, that Jeremy talked a little bit about that at the site visit. That's part of some additional improvements associated with the park. We're proposing a gravel parking lot with about 20 spaces, an oval shape. That's the pollinator meadow, is that correct?
The whole block is the pollinator.
Right.
The oval is the lawn.
Okay, the oval area is the lawn area. But the rest of that area, which we saw is currently vegetated with a lot of invasive plants, that's all going to be converted to a pollinator meadow and mowed once annually to help keep those invasive woody plants out. All of that work is outside the commission's jurisdiction, but I wanted to draw it to your attention since it's on the plan. If we could scroll down perhaps to sheet L-6.1.
Oh, sure.
The sheet title is in the bottom right.
6-1, probably next, this one?
6.1,
Yeah, okay.
yes. So this sheet of the plan set shows the isolated wetland, as we're calling it, that extends. The water tank is to the left. The parking lot where we park, the existing parking lot, is to the right. And you can see right as the path extends from the top of the screen down toward the middle of the screen, you can see the Y shape there. The southernmost path is the existing, the northern path is the proposed, and that's where we're going to deal with that slope and have ADA compliance. You can see the proposed 4-foot wide boardwalk that crosses the wetland, and you'll notice those three lobes of those polygons at the 4 corners, or 3 corners rather, of the boardwalk, and that's where the wetland replication will go. So for the for the boardwalk area, I want to make sure I get the numbers correct, so I'm going to refer to the notice of intent here. So where the footbridge crosses the IVW, we have roughly 317 square feet of permanent alteration and 250 square feet of temporary alteration. The temporary alteration is basically the land around the boardwalk where they'll need construction access to actually build it. Frankly, that area is already altered today, but we're going to restore it once the boardwalk's done by way of seeding it with a native wetland seed mix. The permanent alteration of 258 square feet will be restored with a 634 square feet of IVW restoration, and those are those lobes that you see. Basically, the land there is technically upland. It's close in elevation to the adjacent wetland. We're going to lower the elevation, remove the topsoil, lower the elevation to about a foot below the wetland elevation, put about a foot of wetland topsoil back, and then plant it and seed it with native plants. And that's all on the discussed in the application and inspect on the in the plan set. We do have straw wattles proposed along the limits of the corridor where the trails will be improved to the extent that we're in conservation jurisdiction. Things are pretty low and flat, so I don't anticipate a lot of sediment potential. So that should, straw wattles should be sufficient. And if we go down to the next plan sheet, there we go. That is that's the area where the boardwalk is. And you'll see through the center of your screen, you have the gas easement that runs north-south.
Where is this in relation to the previous drawing?
This is southwest.
So to the left-hand corner.
Yeah, the bottom left-hand corner. This is
That's
where
the big
the
intersection.
actual the proposed boardwalk with the viewing platform is going
That's
to
the
go.
deck.
This is boardwalk.
So you can see the vertical line that extends through the center of the screen there. That's the gas easement going north-south. And then perpendicular to that, east-west, is the existing trail that intercepts the gas easement. And then we're proposing to extend the trail and round it about that, or go around the intermittent streams that are there. And as soon as the trail intercepts the BVW, right about just to the left of the cursor right there, that's where the boardwalk will begin. So you can see that that's the shape of the boardwalk. It's about 250 linear feet that will be supported via the vehicle piles that Josh talked about. 4 feet wide with a viewing platform at the end, and there'll likely be some informational a kiosk or something at the platform. So here, again, we have temporary wetland alteration and permanent wetland alteration. Temporary wetland alteration is the narrow strip of land around the footprint of the boardwalk where they'll need to get in for construction access. That temporary alteration will be restored in kind. In terms of numbers, we have 845 square feet of temporary alteration that will be restored in place, and 1,275 square feet of permanent alteration. That's basically the footprint of the boardwalk. So even though we're using helical piles to elevate the boardwalk above the wetland, technically there's still alteration in the state's eyes because of the shading effect and the removal of the vegetation. Accordingly, we're proposing roughly 218 square feet of wetland replication, which is shown in the dark polygon that the cursor is on now. That land is immediately adjacent to the wetland, and it will be excavated, again, cut down, excavated to a grade roughly a foot below the adjacent wetland, backfilled with wetland soils, planted and seeded with native wetland seed mix and woody plants as well.
How much area is it?
The wetland replication is 2,816. And it's a large area, but we're trying to meet the commission's 2-to-1 replacement requirement of the bylaw. Again, where the pathway crosses the streams, we'll have the stepping stones, and when it crosses the easement, where there's a wet area there, there'll also be stepping stones there. So the stones will allow pedestrian access, but will not inhibit the movement of water. I anticipate that it's probably flowing in the spring, and it was flowing when we were out there now, given the unusual weather we had. But I think that come June, July, August, September, October, it's probably pretty dry. Probably into November as well. So I think that covers what's outlined in the notice of intent application. We include in the application the regulatory compliance for the BBW, the riverfront area, under the Act and the bylaw, and we feel confident that we meet those requirements. So with that, we'd be happy to answer any questions that the commission may have.
Okay, John or Eileen, do you have comments on any part of this plan or concerns?
So I've walked the site with the applicant's team several times, and there was a tweak or two made to the plans as a result of that. Rich mentioned the stream, which was originally part of their trail, which they're now relocating around because it's flowing, the water's flowing through there. So I don't have any concerns. I would point out that time of year, we didn't really thoroughly review the wetland delineation. It's pretty difficult in the winter too. But I think it's generally accurate. We didn't go flag by flag for the entire delineation. But I think it's generally pretty accurate.
Okay. So it sounded like there was no major concerns.
Correct.
Okay. Let's see if anybody has questions. Jen, anything on this?
No, I think it looks like it'll be some nice improvements to the park when it's all done, for sure. And I definitely appreciate the 2-to-1. I mean, I know that's in our bylaws, but it's nice to see that, you know, that's going to be taken care of, so.
Excellent. Yes. All right. John, anything on
Well,
this?
I went on the walkthrough, and it was very good, so I have no questions.
All right. Bill?
At one point on the walk, there was a section of walkway that you said was going to be relocated a small distance to pull it closer to the wall. I didn't see that in the plans. Is that outside the jurisdictional area, or?
That is part of the RDA, or no, is that part of the RDA?
No, it's outside the jurisdiction.
Okay,
Okay.
okay. It didn't seem major, but it was to get, the idea was to not walk on the waterway itself?
Yeah, I can show you on the plan, that's shown really clearly here. The stone wall is the dark line.
Yep.
The existing trail comes up and then veers off the wall. So we would be connecting through here with new trail. It's right about here where it ends.
And obscuring the old trail to?
Exactly, this would be obscured, and then there is water flowing through here, so that is a stream bed.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to see where it was on the drawing.
Jeremy, you probably want to state your name for the record and your relationship, just.
Sorry, Jeremy Vick, Trustees of Reservations.
Okay.
Great, thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
The planting plan, you listed numerous plants that you intend to use, and they're all native and they all look good. It's not, just to make sure I understand, the only planting you plan to be doing is in the replication areas?
That's right. We do specify that land adjacent to the trails that will be improved. Basically, right now, they're variable width, 3 to 5 feet, very undulating with different types of soil. They're going to uniformly create a 6-foot wide path with 3 inches of gravel underlain by geotech fabric. The land immediately adjacent to that, while it appears to be mowed and trampled on as we saw during the site walk, that land will be restored with an erosion control seed mix, a native one.
Okay.
But aside from that and the wetland replication that you see here, that's the only planting we're proposing.
Okay. I noticed in reading your text that you had some tree protection fencing measured. Is that a temporary thing for some of the major trees that are there?
Yes, for example, down by the sidewalk, or down by the boardwalk rather, at the sidewalk, right in that area where the cursor is, there's a pretty large maple tree, like the silver maple. The plans specify for tree protection, so there would be tree protection around that silver maple during the installation of the path and the boardwalk, just to make sure the machines don't blow.
Absolutely, yep. And the last item I have, even though I know it's outside our jurisdictional area, why do we need a new parking lot when we have one?
I'm going to let Jeremy answer that question.
So the existing parking lot is controlled and licensed to, sorry.
can use any of the microphones, you just have to speak into it pretty closely.
So
You can just take, yeah, right.
the existing parking lot is managed by the town of Burlington under license with the city of Boston, not in control of the trustees. So we wanted to install a new parking lot and new entry to the park from Blanchard Road that actually gets you into Mary Cummins Park, not the Burlington soccer facility.
Is there a need for it in terms of that farther parking lot fills up, or it's just a matter of having your own control?
I think it's control and access to the larger park. Yeah. So, because currently, if you park at the soccer field, you're walking through that that undeveloped trail that we will be developing before you actually get into, I guess, what is the larger Mary Cummins Park.
John, did you have a comment?
So, just to clarify, although it's not, the parking lot and the pollinator meadows are not necessarily within 100 feet of wetlands, the commission still has jurisdiction because of the land disturbance under the erosion and sedimentation control bylaw. So we would have conditions regarding that for erosion control and stormwater control as part of this. So we combine our stormwater bylaw into an order of conditions on a project like this. So even though it's not wetlands, you're disturbing more than 10,000 square feet of land up there, so it falls under that.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
All right, Gail.
And then, one more thing I'll add. That area does include some planting, so we're specifying trees to be planted.
So those circles are new plantings?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So there will be additional planting, not in the NOI.
Thank you.
Gail, anything further?
No, good.
All right, Indra, anything further? Okay, could you go back to the other drawing just for a moment you had?
Which one do you mean?
The one, that one, well, that one first.
This,
That's an isolated wetlands in the middle, that's correct?
That was our determination. We started delineating the boundary, but it was so incredibly dense and thick in there. It seemed like a fool's errand when our focus really was the existing boardwalk and replacement of that. The MassGIS wetlands layer that's included in the notice of intent application shows it as isolated. Whether it's isolated or bordering, it's still under the jurisdiction of the Conservation Commission because of their bylaw. If the commission wishes to remain silent on whether or not it's isolated or bordering, or specify in their findings that they haven't made a determination one way or another, I think that's fine.
Well, under the bylaw, isolated wetlands above 500 square feet is jurisdictional for us.
Right, and this one's clearly
500 square feet.
Or bordering is much larger than that.
All right, and the hydrology, you would say, is fed from overland flow?
Well,
Is that?
I think that's the source of it. There's overland flow, there's groundwater interception. We didn't really see any streams or anything. Usually on a bordering vegetated wetland, you know, at that low point where the boardwalk is, I would anticipate seeing a stream that's directing water from one side to the other. And we didn't see anything like that when we were out there.
So is there anything in this project that would interrupt the flow of overland flow hydrology in a significant way?
No.
All right, so you don't see any chance that the hydrology would be interrupted?
No.
Okay. Could go to the next drawing? Had another question. Okay, and.
did you want this or the one we were on before?
No, wait,
With
that
boardwalk?
one. Okay, the darker area is a replication area.
Correct.
It's going to be a wetlands replication area.
That's right.
Correct. So here's my question. It looks like with the current grading, you'll be taking out a lot of material.
Yep.
Could you describe that? Have you thought through the process of how you're going to get all that? You're going to get that material out, or what you're going to do with it? It looks like a lot of digging right there.
Yeah, there's a fair amount of soil that'll have to come out. I mean, it is on a slope, and we're gonna, follow the grade down as we remove the soil to where we intercept the hydrology. We're showing that the elevation will be basically level with the elevation of the bordering vegetated wetland boundary.
Of course, yeah.
But in all likelihood, the groundwater elevation probably follows the slope to some extent, so we probably won't have to remove as much of that material as we specify on the plan.
You would think that, you'd think the groundwater elevation would follow it that sharply? That's kind of,
to
kind of
some extent.
unusual.
I don't think it's gonna follow it, paralleling the ground surface.
Oh,
I
okay.
don't think that's the case.
I was gonna say, that's
No,
pretty
If
good.
that were the case, then the wetland would extend up the slope.
Exactly.
So I think it will follow the topography slightly, but not to that extent.
So I guess my question was, since there's a lot of material
Yeah.
and you seem to indicate you're gonna remove it, how is that going to be done?
A lot
You
of
see what I'm
trips
saying?
with smaller equipment.
Smaller equipment, like,
Josh, any thoughts on that? We talked a little bit about that at the,
I'm just, I mean,
so
yeah, go ahead.
what we anticipate is, you know, like a mini excavator.
Okay.
Probably some kind of track machine to haul it outside of the buffer zone into some kind of probably small dump truck and then we're planning to keep some of that cut in to backfill some of the stump holes in the pollinator meadow.
So you'd have some type of, track-mounted,
It'll all be track machine for sure.
there'll be some kind of a track, wide tread,
Yeah.
small truck?
Yeah, it depends
I don't
on
know
what
what
the
the other word
contractor
is.
has, but I think given the site conditions, and there'll be mats like over we're required to mat for two reasons in the gas easement, you know, for pipeline protection and for the wetland resource. So with all that, I mean, it won't be any rubber tired equipment. It'll be track machines, you know. So what the contractor has, whether it's like a tracked dump truck, you know, like or if it's just a track skid steer, either or.
And where will they go? They will go uphill to where?
Uphill on that proposed,
You can go over there, so,
Okay.
so I don't think
Yeah.
Eileen knows where you're talking about there.
so especially making this cut on that kind of slope, I mean, that's an excavator job for sure.
Right,
Which
that's,
is very-
that's kind of why I'm asking
Yeah,
this.
which is very controlled, you know, with that, and I'm sure the contractor won't want to have any overdig, you know, in this tight area, so it'll be a very careful excavation. So my thought is, and this is really the only way, they'll have to use this route, which will be our trail route, to the gas easement, and then up
Go
into
up, go up.
Flyers Field.
Go up right through Flyers Field.
Yeah, yeah. So and we anticipate crafting the bid document to really say that we really want to minimize the impact. It has to stay as tight as possible.
And how about restoration from the vehicle? If it happens to be really wet, you might dig up a lot of stuff.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And I don't know if John filled you in, but this is a park grant, so we really have to execute this early spring. So we are anticipating that there'll be impacts, and they'll have to be restored. I think what will be key in that, though, is that we're not using the staging, you know, is well into the upland dry areas.
Right.
You know, there's a difference between tracking and making a haul road. You know, that's really minimal, but once you start turning around and, you know what I mean, dumping
Yeah.
soil. So I think, you know, with good construction documents and good oversight.
Yeah, I just can see it getting dug up quite a bit when those machines start turning and digging and placing in a truck. I mean, it goes like this
Yeah.
and the whole thing gets all dug up.
Yeah, down in here.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
I think that's a good point, and I think we can work with John to condition or, you know, have some kind of understanding that maybe, you know, maybe we work on the construction sequence through a pre-construction meeting and figure out a way to,
I mean, I was just wondering if some type of construction mats could be laid down so that when all that turning and twisting of the machines, which is where a lot of it might get dug up,
yeah, that's a good point.
you could stage it on the construction mat, and then it might minimize any disturbance.
Yeah, and we could certainly waddle and stuff too, like, you know, downhill of where they're hauling out of, you know what I mean?
Could you sort of propose something? We need something, I think, John, for the record on this.
Okay.
So maybe some, after you give it more thought, I mean, I'm not asking you to state it on the fly, but.
Yeah, I
but-
think we can come up with something, John, and I can
Yeah.
follow up with you early next week.
The reason is because the office can't, our staff can't condition it if they haven't got exactly what you're doing.
Yeah, yeah,
So if they know what you're doing, maybe
sure,
it would be a lot easier to write conditions.
yeah. But I think generally, if we had the construction mats and some erosion control during the haul-out process.
Yes.
I mean, that seems like the most logical,
Right.
most economical, and probably the best way to do it.
John, anything?
So I was,
I'll
to
give it to
to
you.
Jennifer's point about the 2-to-1, so this replication is not for filling wetlands. This replication is for putting a boardwalk over wetlands. So the wetlands will still exist. They'll be altered somewhat because they'll be shaded. So they will unquestionably be altered, but they're not going to be filled wetlands. So one thing you could consider is reducing the impact in this buffer zone area and this excavation by maybe loosening your 2-to-1 requirement, and that wouldn't require quite as big an excavation in that area. It's just something for you to consider.
As a reminder, the permanent alteration for the boardwalk is 1,275 square feet, and the wetland replication area is roughly 2,816. So if we went with a, closer to a 1-to-1 with perhaps a 1,300 or 1,500 square feet, that would reduce that wetland replication area almost by half.
What is the percentage success of the replication area from, you've been with LEC a long time, and I know because you told me.
Yeah. It
So-
really depends on the installation. If it's installed correctly and the methods are followed.
It could be successful, a
100%.
high degree of success with a 1-to-1?
Yes.
Okay, so at all, I guess it will depend on the detail in the construction bid documents, and are you going to be, would you anticipate, we may require it, that you would be supervising it, or somebody from a wetlands point of view?
That's always a good idea. The Wetlands Protection Act regulations do require 2 years of monitoring to demonstrate that you have.
No, I'm
at
talking
least-
during construction, like a construction monitor.
Right, well, I was going to get there, but
Yeah.
they do require 2 years of monitoring to ensure 75% coverage by native wetland plants.
Right.
But yes, either some oversight by perhaps Mr. Keeley or a wetland specialist is, it's always a good idea
Yeah,
to help ensure the
I'll let
compliance.
John and Eileen decide how best to condition that requirement and what role they want to play. Okay, we have to leave that to you to come up with something, perhaps. Yes, Bill, anything?
No.
Okay.
I wanted to ask about the tailings. Where are the tailings going to be stored from digging out the stuff?
Oh, the soil that's removed from
Yeah.
the wetland replication area?
Yes, go
It would
ahead.
likely be used up in the parking lot and the pollinator field. Because there's a lot of dense woody growth in there now, they're gonna be grubbing that area, and they'll probably use that soil to help level it out. That's correct.
Anyone else for?
It's not yet. Not yet.
Okay, is there anyone in the audience would like to have a question or a comment or something explained? Come on up. State your name again.
John Sachs,
we know you.
Friends of Mary Cummings Park. I was just curious, since you're crossing the pipeline, I'm assuming that this may be a question more for Jeremy and the gang, but I assume you got to work closely with the pipeline people because you're bringing equipment across their 500 PSI gas line, and I assume they'd be fairly uptight about that. But the related question is, over the years, the pipeline has become an informal trail, but they also created a wetland or two by basically the sloppiness of their construction. So I was just wondering if the trustees have an ongoing working relationship with the gas company about what happens. I mean, basically, I don't want to see them come through and bulldoze what you're doing, the path to the boardwalk. They could come through for the periodic trail clearing and just destroy everything you've done. So I'm assuming that you've got a working relationship there.
I can speak to that, yeah. So I've been in touch, I was actually in touch with the gas company engineer this morning. So we've been in contact with them, and, they seem very willing to work with us. Most of their concern is, as you mentioned, is about the ground pressure, and so the engineer will come out and do a site walk based on the equipment list that we give them. At this point, we're focused mostly on the boring stuff, and then once we have a contractor selected for the larger construction project, we'll have another equipment list and go through that. But as far as any long-term plans on the gas line, we're not really anticipating any improvements really on the gas line, aside from, I think, maybe 2 stepping stones to get across. But other than that, I think the long-term plan will be to improve the trail experience to the boardwalk, which I think is the kind of the next phase of trail development and improvements at Mary Cummings Park. So.
Any questions for Josh on this?
Weren't you also talking about during the site visit of trying to obscure that trail that is now the pipeline?
Yeah, that's not in the, like, this spring, that's probably, in the summer. We're focused on getting this project done, and we have a pretty tight timeline. But yeah, that's the long-term plan. So we're not, this is a significant investment for the property, so I think, to avoid that resource area as a priority, but also improve the experience, to that boardwalk will be a priority once it's built.
Okay.
Anyone else? Is there any reason that the gas company would, since those stepping stones are part of the trail to get across?
Yeah.
Is there any reason why the gas company, when they come in with their annual maintenance, would move them and upset that and?
They could just be put back in place, though.
I guess,
Stones, so. I
Yeah,
think that's
I
the
mean,
point, right? Because they're, easy to.
Yeah, we talked about it, and, the engineer said, it's not really a structure, so they're not, as long as we're not, digging, we're anticipate just placing those with the, by hand and with the shovel, so I don't see it as being a major thing.
Okay. Anyone else in the audience for this? Okay, so, John, do you see any reason why we cannot close this out on the 13th?
I don't. So if you were to decide to change the replication requirement, we would need a plan change with a reduced replication.
Should we talk about that now? I think that's what he's getting at.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have, it's a difference of like 2,400 square feet versus 1,200 square feet. You folks have all heard the information that they've said that they can, LEC has said that they think they can achieve a high degree of success with the replication area. In this case, given the amount of disturbance on the slope, less might be better, and what's up for discussion is, should we waive the regulation of 2-to-1 and think it might be better to have a lower percentage like 1-to-1? Who wants to talk?
Well, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I support this idea, because it does seem like we'd have a lot of disturbance, especially at the higher altitude part.
Yeah, that could be.
So,
Exactly.
yeah.
Give you a little bit.
Jen, comments?
Yeah, I think it's worth exploring, especially because, as John mentioned, and you mentioned, that it's not like you're filling in all that area over the boardwalk. It's just due to shade, which, is impactful, but it's certainly not as impactful as filling it in. So I think it's absolutely worth a discussion of.
And Bill?
I was going to say exactly those points, so yes, I agree.
All right. Gail?
So Andrew was going to propose something, so let him, because we may all
I
then
think-
discuss something.
Since we are not 100% sure the degree of accuracy, replication, I think it would be better if we go 1.5:1.
Okay. All right, anybody want to comment? I have a comment on that.
That sounds reasonable.
All right, I like sticking with 1-to-1. I'll explain why. Because if you look at the amount of excavation will be substantially, it's not like 50% you cut the replication, because the elevation goes up, up, up. If you go with 1-to-1, the excavation becomes far more minor compared to so, I don't know whether it's only 1/3 of what would be the excavation, or it's 1/4 or something like that. But, I mean, the more you go across those grade lines, the more you're gonna be excavating. So if you need a 1.5 to 1, you're gonna be farther out, going up the hill, excavating it all out and moving all that material. If you go with 1 to 1, am I right about all this?
I believe that if we were to go to 1-to-1, that the replication area would be slightly less than half of what it is now. It'd be the left-hand side of that polygon, if you will.
I'm talking about the amount of material being removed. though.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. If the size of it decreases by more than half, then the amount of material that you have to remove also decreases pretty significantly.
Actually, it would be more than half because it's deeper.
Right, because, in order to get this portion of the replication area down to the elevation of the wetland, you have to go down significantly more feet than you do to get this portion of the replication area down to the elevation of the wetland. So if we were to go to 1-to-1, which would be about half of the size of this polygon, we'd be excavating up to about 3, maybe 4 feet at the worst case in here. Whereas up in here, you know, each contour represents a foot, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You know, we're talking about excavating 6, 7 feet into the ground for this half of it. So if we go to 1-to-1, that limits our excavation to perhaps 2, 3, maybe 4, at the worst case, 4 feet, and we might be able to shape this to keep it at 3 feet.
Yeah, so you're talking a significant volume of excavation.
Yeah, you'd reduce the volume to about 1/3 of what you'd be moving.
Right.
Otherwise.
So for that reason, I don't know what other people feel. I would be in favor of keeping it at 1, perhaps.
The other thing I would add is that while we didn't do a shade analysis, this boardwalk is going to be elevated above the land surface. So as the sun rises and sets, it's going to be shining light below the boardwalk to some extent. So in other situations, in applications similar to this one, you do have vegetation growing beneath the boardwalk. It's just difficult to quantify that.
Right, right.
Well, along those lines, do we need a replication at all? I mean, we're really not removing wetlands.
There's disturbance, though.
There is,
Yeah.
there is
And I think you-
alteration.
But is this more of a disturbance to
Yeah.
create this replication than what we're causing by putting in the boardwalk?
I think that's kind of a slippery slope. If you're altering a wetland and you're not, you know, kind of abiding by having some restoration.
I agree with you,
Okay,
Carol, on
I
that
just
one.
wanted to throw it out there.
Yeah.
That's, so we've gone from Indra going
Yeah.
up on the ratio.
Get it.
Bill said, just forget the whole thing.
Just
Two extremes and put
A lot
people
of
in the middle, what does that mean?
A lot of the vegetation out there is cattails. I mean, you're not going to have cattails growing up through the boardwalk.
No.
All right, so I'd
It
entertain
would
a,
also, you know, any kind of, it would affect anything that lives there as well, if it's shaded, so.
could I have a motion from the
additional
commission?
plants. Where they live. Yes, I'd make a motion to go to a 1-to-1 restoration,
Okay,
to change it from 2-to-1 to 1-to-1 wetland replication.
why don't we do the waiver first, because it's part of our
Okay,
bylaw.
all right.
Could I have a motion to waive the 2-to-1 replication of the bylaw, since it will have less environmental impact? Some motion like that under our Burlington bylaw, Article 14. Is there a motion like that?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
So are we making a motion on a waiver or something like that?
This is the motion, this is supposed to be a motion on the waiver. I may not have stated it right,
You
but
said it was something like that.
it's something like that.
I was wondering what was
Okay,
in the
but
record.
good thing we have a person here who will take very, very good notes. She knows what we meant. Okay, any discussion on it? I stated the justification, so she's nodding that. Okay, all in favor? All right, 6-0-0. All right, could I have a motion now on the replication ratio?
I move to alter the requirement for replication from 2-to-1 to 1-to-1.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor? 6-0-0, unanimous.
I have one last question. For the purposes of showing the revised wetland replication area, can we just revise the one planting plan sheet, or or do you want a revision to the entire plan set?
No, that sheet.
No, you can
Just
just
the
alter that.
planting sheet?
Yeah.
Okay, just want to make sure, because I know it's shown on other areas, but the
Yeah.
commission could clarify that it's great. That's a huge help, because it's quite expensive to print
Yeah.
all these.
Yeah, no, that's certainly understand that.
All right.
All right, so, is there any other issues which people need to bring up? Hearing none, then the next meeting is February 13th. And according to what I heard from Mr. Keeley earlier, we'll close and issue the order at that point, and you'll be on your way.
That would be fantastic, thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Nice presentation, folks. All right, this will be a significant improvement to Mary Cummings Park.
So it's probably just going to be 6.2.
Very
just so I know, right?
significant.
You're probably just going to change 6.2, just so I know what to expect.
That
Thanks.
signature
Yep.
put down before we start leaving.
Yeah, and what's also nice is, we don't have, as you know, we don't have really very close trustee properties, and so having this property managed by the trustee for us in Burlington, in this area, this is a big deal, a very big deal. And you're from Boston? Oh, you are?
She's she's the head.
You're the one who signed all this application stuff?
She's the
She's just
landowner.
not, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
What's your name?
Coordinators.
Fantastic that you made your way out here, probably in traffic to get here.
It's a delight to be here. We're thrilled that the trustees are taking this on. It's such a magical property.
Right, we are really pleased that they have a significant property in this area. I think Burlington should be very happy about that. All right, thank you very much. Thank you all for being here.
Maybe you can get a light rail system to get there.
Right from Mary Cummings Park.
Okay, so we have one thing to sign before
You want to back
anybody
up?
leaves. And then we have to, before you leave, we should adjourn the meeting probably. What's that?
No, he's observing,
Oh, good.
Okay.
potential commissioner.
Oh, got it.
Okay. Do you have anything you'd like to say at all?
Right now, no.
Okay, you're just sort of observing, right?
Does Larry know who he is?
Fantastic. Okay.
I think Bill told him.
All right, so,
Hope he doesn't think-
all right, so we have planning board comments. Is there anything for the planning board at all?
This project,
Okay, so you will,
that's before the planning board for site plan.
okay, all right. And will you be mentioning that we reduced, through our motions, we reduced our replication area to lessen the environmental impact?
Okay.
Okay. Subcommittee and staff reports? Upcoming meetings, February 13th, February 27th. Anyone not going to be around? And finally, other business. We have a town meeting coming up Monday. So is there anything that we should be aware of happening on our behalf?
No, there's no conservation-related articles.
I guess that.
Not yet.
Not yet. Are you expecting some?
No, well. Yes, later,
Okay.
later town meeting.
Okay. I should point out that I am one of many people on the Citizens Committee for the Community Preservation Act. That is coming up in May, and we'll be asking town meeting to approve a ballot question to go in May. We'll vote on a ballot question in May to go to the voters in the November 2020 election. And there'll be a ballot question asking if Burlington as a community would like to adopt the Community Preservation Act. And we'll be talking about that more as we get closer to that vote. Okay. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? That was unanimous.
Doke.
Okay, good evening.
6.